Oh yes, this is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. And today's show, sponsored by Cheshire Impact, on a mission to help people maximize their use of Pardot and Salesforce. CheshireImpact.com. Bam. And we're live. So cool. I can't wait to introduce you all to who we're going to be chatting with today. So exciting. My guest is a marketing leader, ABM practitioner, strategist, amazing person to chat with. We chatted briefly earlier. Lots to talk about today. And the CMO of TimeTrade, Lauren Mead. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good. This is so cool. Let's dive into it. And so I want to tell people the theme first, which is our marketing leadership series. And so we're honored to have you here to learn from you today. And so here's the hammer. I want to pass you. This is Thor's hammer. So
okay, thanks.
Take that and smash for me some kind of crazy marketing strategy or, bogus, stuff that you hear out there all the time that just drives you crazy and you just need to smash it once and for all.
All right. So my big smash today is that sales owns the customer relationship and that marketing has to ask for permission to talk to the customer. And I'll give a shout out to Samantha Stone because I actually heard her, share this kind of myth, and it totally resonated with me as something, I totally believe in, is that, for marketing to be successful, we can't, always just go to sales and, obviously you have to be aligned with sales. Don't get me wrong. You can't go and sneak around them, but, it's so important that marketing is aligned with customers and, can speak to their challenges and can interact with them to be good at what we do and be able to align most with what the customer needs. Is that it's really not an option for marketing to, get engagement with customers, and you can't allow sales or customer success or whomever to block you from building those relationships.
I'm so glad you called it out. It's like such a point because I've been in situations where, and whether it's, our company or, you're visiting or you're working with someone and you want to nurture someone, or you want to send a campaign out, but, that lead's in a certain status and you can't reach out to them until sales deals with that status. And, when that lead is like not really interested, it's not really high on sales' priority to clean out their list of people if you don't have some good SLA. So I've for sure seen that gridlock that can happen when sales owns that now. Oh, really? They do? Okay. What do we do about it? Nothing. Let's go get more leads. It's horrible.
Yeah. And I feel especially, when you talk about, building on case studies or even talking to current customers,
right?
A relationship with a customer is so complex and there's changing, relationships and things are going on with the implementation and the other stack. And I think so often sales gets like really caught up in the details and they're like, no, you can't talk to them right now because of X, Y, and Z. When it actually comes down to it, we're not asking for a favor. I think sometimes the customer appreciates, their voice being heard and how we can better as a whole company support them. So leveraging marketing as a resource to engage the customer and share best practices with them or get their feedback, I think can be a great addition to building that relationship.
Yeah, I love that you said that. We're not asking for a favor. It's not like, hey, sales, can we please, have permission to go to Tommy's house to play? It's like, what are you talking about?
Denied.
We're in this together. And like, no, please don't email them. Do you have an opportunity? What's going on with them? No, we don't have anything going on right now, but don't email them. It's like, it's that, us versus them mentality. That doesn't work.
And I think it comes down to a trust thing, right? If you have a great relationship with sales and they trust that you know what you're doing and, you can have a intelligent conversation with the customer, then hopefully they should trust you. So I think that's one of the recommendations, I think, in terms of getting to that point is start small with sales, sit in on calls, even just as a silent participant, and then just show that you're learning, what's going on and you can participate in those things with them. And then I think they'll feel a lot more comfortable kind of handing over the reins and letting you get directly involved.
Yeah, it's so true. Like getting a little bit of, I call it boots on the ground time, or just, the frontline time where you're just shadowing. I've been a fly on the wall. I remember a particular sales call. I'd first joined a company, and sales did not think highly of marketing at the time. My predecessor didn't do us any favors, and I just wanted to hear the conversations with the leads and learn when they learned. And one of the first calls I sat in on, all expecting to hear great things, and the first thing the prospect said was, "Who are you again, and what do you do?" Like, they had no idea, and they had like taken the call and everything. And so I'm like, wow, this is not qualified. They're not educated. They're not, man, this is a waste of the salesperson's time. We can do so much better, and I would have known that if I hadn't sat in on that call.
Yeah. And it prepares you so much more in terms of what things, marketing, I think, tends to do more of a one-to-many than a one-to-one like sales does. And it gives them such direct insight into, what type of materials and campaigns that we can create. What are the common questions that, your customers are asking, so they can work that into your campaigns and hopefully set the stage that sales has either the tools, or we're, pre-answering those questions before they get on the phone.
I like that. It's so true that sales is a great source for those questions. We're always trying to answer questions with content, and well, ideally we are, right? The worst case is if we don't answer anything, we just make content for content's sake. But the better marketers we're like, oh, what question can I answer for the buyer? I have no idea. It's like, hey, sales, that's such a great point. Like, sales is such a treasure trove of these particular questions.
Yeah. One of the things that we're doing on our team is actually I've paired a couple people up from marketing with account executives, and I asked them to kind of join an account team for a particular opportunity that they're working.
Oh.
So basically we said to sales, like, choose an opportunity that you think, you have a good shot of winning, but it's not a slam dunk. And I want my, person from marketing to join every single call with that customer and be copied on those emails. I want you to assign them like homework to help out with that deal, so they can really get entrenched in, what are the things that sales is going through to help better position us, and so we can create more of that content and materials to support them.
That's
So
cool.
we just kicked that off, but some initial good feedback and seeing kind of what that process goes through. I also heard, if you're looking to do it more at scale, it's not something we've done yet, but, I was talking to another marketer who actually uses some of the call recording tools that have more of that AI element. So they were using Gong.io, taking those call recordings, and actually you can see what are the common questions that people are asking on calls, and use that to seed the campaigns in a little bit more of a scalable way.
That makes sense. Whether it's scalable or not, the idea of pairing them up, that's really cool. So it was a deal that hadn't been sold yet, and so you're kind of pairing them up through the whole sales process?
Yeah, so it's like we set, hopefully the goal is they will join the very first discovery call all the way through to closing that deal. And our sales cycle tends to be a little bit longer, so it will take some time to get that feedback, but it hopefully will pay off in terms of building those relationships and really understanding exactly what sales is going through the customer acquisition process.
I don't think I've ever heard that before. The idea of pairing them up for that. And then, what a great idea. And in my head, I was mentally picturing like when you tie the legs together at like a picnic at the park or something, three-legged race, and
like handcuffing them for the rest of the quarter.
Yeah. Yeah. What was it? I think it was like in Practical Jokers, they handcuffed one of the comedians to a mime for 24 hours, and it's just like, no.
That sounds like a nightmare.
Actually, that does sound cool. Yeah. And then as soon as they uncuffed him at the end, he said, "Thanks, man. Appreciate it."
Yeah.
Like, oh, now you talk. Now you talk. But yeah, I like that idea, but just, walking in each other's shoes for a little bit to understand there's so much data you can learn. But of course, to your point, build that trust and start small with some, little wins.
Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned Gong too. So many people have been talking about that lately. Seems like one of those things that probably we should chat with them about, the amount of information that happens on those calls, and then not losing that just to, because no one really logs what happens on calls these days.
Yeah.
They call happened, maybe the next step from it, but not the content of it and the real magic of it.
Yeah, we use SalesLoft, so we do have call recording, but to my knowledge, it doesn't, take that information and output it in the same way yet, or at least the version that we have. So it's interesting to be able to dive more into that content and get the bigger picture.
Yeah, and and speaking big picture, right? As a CMO, like if you would be asked, what's your overall approach to marketing, or how do you look at the big picture? Do you have a way that you kind of come into it? Like, let's say you started a brand new company tomorrow. Like, when you come in, what are you looking at? What are you looking for?
Yeah, so I think really kind of when I start out, and I went through this when I joined TimeTrade, I think the two biggest things that I try and get really a good understanding of is, one, what is the company's goals at a high level to make sure marketing is really well aligned with what the company wants to achieve. And then two, going back to what we were talking about earlier, just getting a really good understanding of the customer and the market that you're trying to sell to, and taking those two things into building out what the strategy is, because I think that goes to what are we trying to achieve, and then how are we going to get there, how are we going to get people really interested in what we have to offer, and how are we going to take them through that process to hopefully become a very happy customer. I think one of the things in here in terms of goals and goal setting, I think for me, again, it's all about alignment. So starting with the company goals and then kind of going, down from there. So for me, as someone who has a history as a demand gen marketer, I'm really interested in the funnel. So every quarter I sit down with our head of sales and we kind of do everything backwards, and we say, okay, what's our sales goal? What are our conversion rates, all the way down, and calculating everything out from that perspective. And my philosophy tends to be quality over quantity. So where we do measure every stage of the funnel in terms of like inquiries and leads, I actually, marketing and the BDR team runs up into marketing at TimeTrade. I task my team with generating opportunities, sales accepted opportunities, because if we're generating a ton of leads, that's great. But if they're not quality leads, who cares? It's not tied to revenue. So really helping them take a little bit more ownership over the, building revenue. And, we use some of those early indicators such as inquiries and leads to be, exactly what I said, early indicators of, are we going to hit that opportunity goal? Are we generating enough so that we can diagnose if there's a problem, what needs to be done? Well, we're not hitting the opportunity number. It's because we're not generating enough leads. Is it because, we're not converting the leads enough? How do we look at those different elements in terms of what it drives?
I like that. You mentioned, leads are the early indicators, but they're not the goal. That's
right.
not the final outcome. I think that makes so much sense. And I can see how sales would give you so much more buy-in, knowing that you're not just trying to throw something over the wall.
Yeah. And I think a lead, how you define it is so many different ways. I think when I started here, a lead was like someone who clicked the link in an email, and then we've implemented lead scoring and a lot more, qualitative and quantitative metrics in terms of how we identify who's the right person and when do we engage with them. And even, how you define an opportunity and when that handoff point between each of the different groups, I think, is really important. And we've seen it as I've been here, as our business needs have shifted. We've shifted those handoff points several times. So, with a bigger BDR group, and we were sending over less qualified leads. Maybe if we have a smaller group and we want them to be more focused on outbound, as we implemented ABM, we tightened that criteria up a little bit more, and marketing took more ownership over nurturing those early stage leads versus the BDRs. And then we've also gone back, do you just send sales over like a meeting, or do we really qualify that person and nurture them for a longer period within the BDR group? So we've seen a lot of different changes based on, our teams and what their strengths are. And my lights went out.
Oh, yeah. Flickering lights.
Yeah.
No, I love that. Where does ABM fit into that for you?
So for us, I think, one of the blessings and challenges that we had at TimeTrade is if you have customers that you talk to, you probably could use appointment scheduling, right? So there's a really vast market out there. And I think there's a little bit of confusion in the market, because if you Google online appointment scheduling, there's hundreds of vendors that will come up. So it's a pretty competitive space. But specifically where TimeTrade, is focused from our direct sales efforts, where, my team is really supporting, we are more focused on enterprise type of companies that have a more, sophisticated approach to doing that. We're not competing with some of those lower end vendors where it's like a buy online type of thing. Specifically in our direct sales model, we do have a more, online based product, but we're really targeting some of our customers include Best Buy and Lowe's and, 10 out of the top 20 banks and really huge software and technology companies that have really sophisticated requirements. And that, from a direct sales model, you need those bigger deals to, have the return on marketing sales investment that, you need to be a successful company. So that's kind of where we started with ABM is really, we wanted to make sure that we were focusing on the companies that, one, we knew we were best positioned to solve their needs and have the best conversion rates,
Yeah.
to be better aligned with sales because we could serve such a broad market. We had like new salesperson come on like, I'm going after this market today. And marketing's off like running campaigns at a completely different market. And they're like, well, marketing doesn't give me any like content that I need to, do my campaigns and like sell my process. I'm like, because we're not focusing on that. So, we really sat down and we said, all right, where do we win? Where do we lose? And we use, both, we just kind of talked about it as well as use data to back that up. And we really defined what's our target market. And from there, like we said, like marketing, this is the only place we're running campaigns. If somebody wants to come inbound to us and we get that stuff all the time, that helps inform kind of what is the growth strategy for adding additional markets. But from an outbound perspective, these are the only areas that we're going after as a company. And then we, really got down to the account level, pairing with BDR and sales for them choosing the accounts that they were going to go after on a more one-on-one basis and making sure marketing was aligned and doing campaigns to go after that account and help convert those accounts. So really it was all about tightening in, narrowing down, and improving our conversion rates and the accounts that for us really mattered.
Makes sense. How do you approach I guess you'd be the perfect person to ask this question to, drum roll. You said such a huge market, and let's say before you even focus on enterprise, how do you approach defining that target market? And you mentioned a little bit of data and a little bit of something else. Any kind of details on how because I could see someone being like, well, let's sell to everybody.
Yeah. So for us, it was kind of like we started with the data. So we said, okay, let's take all the opportunities that we've generated over the last, I can't remember what the period we used was, like, say it was a year.
Okay.
We said, okay, like, which person, and we broke them into categories based on industry, size of company, employees. We also looked at like technographic type of information, what other things were in their stack. And we said, what were some of the common characteristics in the company, in the deals that we lost? What were some of the common characteristics in the companies that we won? And like, where do we see the most success in terms of solving those problems? One of the things we saw is like sometimes if a company didn't have that much complexity in what they were trying to do from an appointment standpoint, you can buy something online or you get something online for free that would solve their problem. So could they use TimeTrade? Absolutely. But maybe there's something just less expensive that solves their problem. So really understanding, for those bigger companies, are they using Salesforce? Do they want appointments directly integrated with that? Are they trying to, look at like routing people to specific locations and have a lot of skill-based routing to the appointments? Do they have to have multiple people on different calls or scheduling resources? All those questions that really go into the use case. So industry use case for us, we kind of look at them a little bit similarly because they tend to fall in line. So we saw those characteristics, and then we kind of added on where people will say like, okay, we like this one because of this, we don't like this one because of that. And then we really drilled down into, we basically came up with 10,000 companies off of that met the size, the industry, use case, and technographic criteria that we set forth. And those are the ones, from an outbound perspective, we were really going after. And those are also not one size fits all. So we have different, messaging and channels within that 10,000, but that's kind of the subset. And it really breaks down, I think, to like 5, personas that we're really selling into, which makes it a lot more reasonable for marketing to really do full, more integrated campaigns into those people.
Right. And it made total sense when you started describing some of the more advanced features, and then if you're more of that simple, either a solo user, tiny company, or
Mhm.
you just want to book something great. But some of the things you mentioned there, if you wanted that, those other tools would not serve you. You'd
Yeah.
be so angry to try to fit into one of those. So I could see those questions coming up in the process. Do you have Salesforce? Do you value integration into that? If
Yeah.
yes, then it's like a no-brainer. If
Hmm.
no, then okay, now we know what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And I can see that even tying into like lead grading and scoring and rating whether a lead is a good fit or not. But you did all this to figure out who those 10,000 companies were, which is
Yeah.
really cool. Tell me about the persona work. Did you do buyer interviews, or how did you kind of come up figure out that those 10,000 sort of fit into 5 major buckets?
Yeah. So we did do a little bit. I mean, I think the nice thing was a lot of that 10,000 fell like pretty heavily within our customer base. So there were people that we had a lot of experience selling to in the past. And we did have a lot of pre-existing content. There are certainly some holes in terms of what we had to validate, but we had a pretty good handle on those people already. So it's kind of going back to saying, okay, now we've identified our strengths and what we're really good at. Let's just pick off that low-hanging fruit. And there's plenty of opportunity in our core markets that if we just focus a little bit more on that area, we can really convert them. Because we already have the case studies and references and content. So it's all about just taking what we had and using it more effectively.
Guys, just rearranging a little bit of that.
Yeah.
In terms of the personas, did you break those up into just the way that people buy, or what was your approach to that? Because I know a lot of people think of personas as profiles and vice versa, and there's some confusion around it.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely look at like we mapped persona to title, right? But we did find, so for example, in um like like retail, we sell mostly, I would say it's like operations type of people
Mhm.
who, so if in the case of you're scheduling people in stores, you obviously need to staff the right people. You need to have places to take those meetings. You need to have like the technology infrastructure in place for the people taking the meetings and appointments.
Right.
There's a lot of operational elements that they think about, like, how am I actually going to make this work? And that's the challenge that they face. And there's a lot of different titles. IT sometimes falls within that group and has those same challenges. And then there's like the marketing persona where they're just like, I want to drive the most people into store as possible. And I want attribution for why my digital campaign made somebody walk into that store.
Right.
And there's a lot of different titles that fall under that area. So we kind of group a lot of the titles, and we see, actually where you would think retail and banking are very different. A lot of the, it's the same type of titles in both of those companies that we tend to run into, and their challenges, while unique, are very similar in terms of what they're trying to achieve. So it's little spins on those things, but we were able to group several titles into different personas and see overlap even across industries.
That's so cool. The fact that, I mean, that's why I love personas, because without them, you would be looking at all the different industries you might serve and be like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, like I have to do 14 different versions of this white
Right.
paper. It's overwhelming. But then when you really looked at it, and I think, you took the time to understand not just who the customer is, but like what they're trying to do and like the context for how they're deploying it. So to be able to relate that retail and banking had some very similar overlaps, maybe the buildings look different, but
Yeah.
internally they were basically trying to use it the same way. And then, maybe in marketing automation, maybe the images change, but the core of the message is the same. I mean, it's so smart.
And thinking of the use case, I think really helps with that. Is like
Yeah.
ultimately both groups are trying to drive people into physical locations to meet with like knowledgeable associates, right? So from that perspective, that's where the core of what they're trying to do. And then you take that nuances and like, what are they meeting about? And, why do they want to have a meeting? Is it to try and sell you something or better engage the account, things like that. But when it comes down to, they're both kind of trying to solve a very similar challenge.
And it makes total sense, right? When you mentioned big box stores, and we were even talking like the Best Buys, but we were talking earlier today about those. You know, you couldn't deploy a simple solution, even if it was like $9 a month. Like,
Yeah.
how would you do that across hundreds of stores? That would be impossible to operationally, roll that out. Whereas it might still be a challenge, but it'll be a mass improvement to be able to roll out some sort of enterprise solution at that point. So yeah, that makes total sense. Understanding and picking your battles, not just trying to go after everyone, because if you start trying to serve the little folks, then Best Buy is like, well, maybe you don't really have our solution,
Yeah.
So I know it's kind of scary sometimes sort of picking, but in this case, you're picking the right one. And when
Yeah.
those customers are big enough, and then you'd have a big enough cost, cost per acquisition, and you'd be able to spend some money on marketing to get them in the door.
Yeah. And we actually saw, because prior to using ABM, it was a little bit on the reps to say, like, I'm going to go after this company. And we had like BDRs will be like, it's way easier for me to sell to this like 100-person company than it is for me to go after this like 100,000-person company. So
Yeah.
like they were like kind of going, and they're paid, per meeting or per opportunity. So they didn't really care. So they're like going after the low hanging fruit from
Right.
that perspective, which, to their credit was the right thing for them to do. But for us, it was like meaning we're spending the same amount of sales and marketing efforts, but not getting as much revenue per deal. So by really focusing on those accounts that had the highest value, we actually saw that companies that we sold that were a target account versus when you looked at the ones that weren't had 4 times the ASP. So a pretty
Really?
significant uplift in terms of the value of the deal. It's not because we're charging them more. It's just because they're bigger companies that needed, when we price out per resource, they had more resources to schedule.
You said ASP?
Yeah.
Oh, sale
Average
price?
price. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so it was 4x you were saying? It was just that
Yeah.
much. Yeah, and you could do more with that,
Mhm.
You're not stuck with a really cheap ad campaign or buying a list and spamming it. You can do those ABM things with the
Yeah.
larger companies and the bigger enterprises.
Yeah.
Question, is it 100% ABM, or do you have a mixture of the two? Or is the 10,000 companies it, or is there like a little bit of everything? How do you do that?
So, I mean, I think I wouldn't say it's 100% ABM, right? So we'll still do like industry webinars, and you get stuff that doesn't come in that doesn't fall within those 10,000. But for example, if we're doing an event, one of the things that we always do when we evaluate an event, we say like, what percentage of those attendees overlap with that list?
Hmm.
So it's kind of that criteria that helps us say yes or no. Same thing when we do a webinar where you're using an industry publication to partner with to reach a wider audience. We look at their the market that they serve and say how much overlap is that. So there's always a chance, people coming in that are not in that 10,000, and we certainly don't turn them away, but it's from where we purposely go, we really try and hit that 10,000 as much as possible.
Oh, I love that. And I love bringing it back to the list too afterward by saying what percent of people were in that, and then
Yeah.
you're aware. Do you turn the other people away, or maybe do you have some sort of process in your lead gen, or to be able to figure out and qualify someone ahead of time? If
Yeah,
they're
I mean, we like through the scoring, we can kind of identify. We also, in addition to lead scoring, we also implemented account scoring. So we use DataFox to do that for us.
cool.
So we built out that scoring model. In addition to someone's title, we'll look at the company and see how much that company meets the criteria. And, when we'll get, say, a webinar list, sometimes we'll just pull out, we won't even put into Salesforce the people that don't meet our target criteria, because we don't want the BDRs to spend a lot of time on getting them. So we've really put a lot more thought into the quality of the data in our system to make sure we're reaching the right people. We actually added a role on my team who's really like almost half of his time is focused on data and building out the contacts and those accounts and making sure that 10,000 is really well covered.
Wow. So really investing in that, but it makes total sense to zero in your attention on the ones that are the best fit, because with all those questions you mentioned earlier, that list of 10,000, that's like a solid list.
Yeah.
It's almost like it should be a no-brainer to these people if we can get the right message in front of the right person. It's like,
Yeah.
come on, like
Yeah.
all of your counterparts, they all are customers already.
Yep.
If you're still manually doing those scheduling, then like, come on, let's fix this. So
Exactly.
that's more fun for sales too, to get on a call with someone and all their top 5, bullet points in the sales side and their playlist are like well received. Do
Yeah.
you want this? Yeah, I do. Do you want this? I really want that. Oh, you're like, great.
Well, if they're like going on all day and like pivoting in so many different directions, it's hard to really like get in and be good and understand the needs of your buyer. So I think it's really helped our sales team be more effective because, you know, they're working with these companies all day and they really know the challenges and can share with them best practices that they've heard from other companies.
Right. I can see that persona work benefiting sales too, just to that bigger conversation of, look, it's a bank or it's retail, but here's the use case. I'm sure that's just all around the playbooks and the communication, just to be aware of that use case.
Yeah.
So cool. So cool. I love this. This is fantastic. Tell me, I mean, TimeTrade, right? It's scheduling for meetings. I'm kind of aware, but like overall in the big picture, how does it fit into the marketing ecosystem? Or do you sell the sales or where does that kind
So
of
it's a mix. So like the core of where TimeTrade came from are kind of the type of companies I was mentioning earlier. So we sold to a lot of banks and a lot of retailers, specifically people that were meeting with customers in a physical location and dealing with all the complexities and staffing and integrations that were required for that. A couple of years ago, though, we introduced an app on the Salesforce App Exchange, which kind of leveraged our core technology, but completely integrated it within Salesforce. And for us, that opened up a huge new market for people that are hosting remote meetings and using Salesforce, just like, TimeTrade, like we, drink our own champagne to route meetings, from our website to our reps, from our BDRs as they do outreach and scheduling meetings for our sales team. We use it throughout our process. So even after somebody is sold as a customer, they use our product to set up all the onboarding and implementation meetings and then regular meetings with our customer success team. So it's really like for companies that, if you want to have that really consistent experience and give your customers full access to your team, it can really play out. And because we are a lot more configurable and integrated with the systems they're already using, it's great to cover all those teams. So from on like a B2B perspective, we're selling into marketing, sales, and then the customer success support groups.
Oh, that's very cool. And it's on the App Exchange. Awesome. We'll definitely have to link to that in the show notes so people can check that out. And I'll check that out too. Very cool. Very cool. Who are you? Where did you come from? You're like this wizard of marketing knowledge. Take us back. Take us back to little Lauren. How did you always know you wanted to get into marketing, or how did this all come about?
Sort of. So I'm Boston born and raised. I have not gone too far. Grew up around here.
Red Sox.
Oh yeah. Go Bruins right now.
Go Bruins right now. Stanley Cup, baby. Absolutely.
So I think, I always knew I kind of liked creative and those types of elements. I think if you asked me, I thought I would want to be like a party planner. And I think that's actually how I kind of got some of my inroads to marketing, as events tend to be such an integral part of, marketing in some cases. So that's where I started out. But as I kind of got experience in that, I realized there's so much more. And when you think about how companies can leverage, experiences and interacting with customers, I kind of got a taste of all those different bits. And that's kind of how I expanded. If you had asked me if I would be work for a technology company, I probably would have laughed at you, but that's, where I've spent my entire career and actually really love it. So.
Yeah. So you actually went to school for marketing too.
Yeah, so I did my undergrad at Merrimack College around here, and then I did my MBA at Bentley, both focusing on marketing. So I think once I kind of got that early touch into it, I was like, yes, no, I like this. And I think what I love about marketing is it's just changing so continuously, and every time you apply it, it's so different.
Yeah, that's true. It really is evolving. As much as we like when things stay the same, we also like when they change, and marketing has a little bit of all of that,
Yeah.
SEO 20 years ago is nothing like it is today, and or any of these tactics and strategies. That makes sense.
I was laughing at the one of the questions on your list was around marketing automation, and I think back to my very first marketing job and what marketing automation was. We literally we didn't even buy it. We for too cheap, we had this free tool that would send out emails, and you only send 500 at a time. So I'd have to like export the list,
What was it called?
upload the 500 and like send the email, and then like upload the next one and send the email. I was like, wow,
You're stuck
think of
doing
what we could do now.
500 emails at a time?
Yeah, that was what we did.
What was
And
it
then we
called?
found out it was like, oh, it's like $30 to like buy the full subscription. You can send like 100,000 at a time. I was like, what have I been doing?
It wasn't like a Constant Contact or a MailChimp or something?
I think it was like before those things
Oh,
even. Like,
really? It was like back in the day.
I don't remember the name of it, but it was not pretty.
Yeah, yeah. I remember the times when before marketing automation and ROI, like it was just all about activity.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my favorite stories is when I had a CEO ask me one time. I was like a little marketing manager trying to eat my lunch in the cafeteria, and he came on by and he's like, "How many emails did we send this month, Casey?" And I actually knew it was about 1 million. I was like, "Oh, about 1 million emails." And he was like, "Well, next month let's send 1.5 million." Like that would and this was like IT integration software. So
Yeah.
we're not selling Nike shoes here, right? Like an
Yeah.
extra 500,000 emails to the same people are not going to make anyone your friend if they're just
Right.
rushed out there. So yeah, I remember just trying to actually, I also spent like 3 or 4 hours doing some like Excel wizardry because I
Mm-hmm.
came into one company as like the marketing coordinator, and like, here's
Yeah.
this report that gives us ROI, historical ROI. So, and there's this like long 5-page process. It was called the FLS report, which is kind of like the TPS report.
Yeah,
It
I
was
was
just
just
one of
gonna
those,
say
like,
it sounds like
yeah, and it would take me 3 or 4 hours of just like grunt Excel, copy paste, move around. Eventually I like learned how to make macros just to automate that whole process. But all this work to just know if you spent money on an ad at the beginning on freemium software, did eventually convert at the end. Like all
Yeah.
that was you was trying to hack that. Um,
Yeah.
and but nowadays it's like it's a no-brainer if you have marketing automation.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's so much more to our access, but at the same time, I feel like, things are becoming so much more convoluted with all the different touch points and all the data that it gets even more challenging. We look at digital ads, right? So I feel like generally we don't see a ton of opportunities coming directly through digital ads, but what we now can track is like, what's the view through rate? So we just served them a digital ad, maybe they didn't click on it, but then that same person came back through and visited our website, and
Right.
like tracking the attribution on that. And like, email campaigns, similarly, we're not seeing a ton of direct attribution to sending an email, but, it's directly tied to our direct web traffic and, how we drive leads through our website. And, you take your foot off the gas on any of those different
Mm.
areas, and, it's going to might take you a little while, but you're going to ultimately see the impact. So you got to kind of really touch every channel.
Yeah, it's tough because those touches, for sure, they help. Well, maybe it's a gut feeling, or maybe you can prove it, but whether you can or not, they are helpful. If they're good,
Yeah.
engaging, and you're teaching, and it's moving someone along that sales process, especially if it's like a multi-month one. But you
Yeah.
can't always directly, associate individual emails that you sent
Right.
with a larger effort, and I think first touch is easy. You just, okay, I found you at this trade show. You bought this deal from us eventually, but all that stuff in the middle is so murky.
Mhm. Yeah. But it makes a difference. I mean,
It does.
I think as a marketer, right, I get bombarded with marketing emails all the time. I actually look at a lot of them, like,
Me too.
because I'm trying to see like what else other people are doing and like learning. And we have pretty strict IT policies here. So like, do not click links in any email, so I never click. If you have attribution from me on an email, it doesn't happen. But I'm like, I'm learning, and eventually I'm learning that brand. And when I do have that problem and I'm going to look for something, those companies that have been kind of nurturing me over time, they're going to be the first ones I call.
Yeah, I like to archive emails. I'm like, oh, that's an interesting topic. Don't have time to research that now. Archive.
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever go back and research it, but it kind of feels nice knowing that I've got some bytes stored
Yeah.
somewhere that may have that content. Hopefully, it's still available in
Yeah.
9 months when I want it.
Yeah.
So
That's
cool.
cool.
Well, question, I really kind of like, the final question, or really like the important one is, you're a senior marketing leader, you're CMO. Um, you don't just start out that way from college. If you were to look back and advise yourself, whether you're just getting into marketing in school or maybe when you just got out of school, what kind of advice would you give yourself for your own marketing career? Like what would you tell yourself that maybe didn't know when you first started?
Yeah, I think I didn't do it intentionally, but I think one of the biggest things that helped me get to where I am is just being so willing to jump into new challenges and take on things as I saw them as an opportunity, right? So like that, going back to that marketing automation topic, when I started out in a marketing, manager role and just like being focused on campaigns, I saw an opportunity where I was like, we're using this terrible marketing automation system. I saw that the market had changed in terms of like, what you can do with marketing automation. So I said like, hey guys, I think we need to rethink this. It wasn't my job to do that, but I
Right.
also just didn't sit back and take it. And as, different needs came up at the company, I was always one of the first ones to say like, yeah, I'll pitch in on that. And maybe, I didn't get the promotion right away or it wasn't directly tied to my comp at that time. But I think thinking of the bigger picture in the long run, it tended to pretty much always pay off. And I got to try out so many different areas in marketing and grow my skill set. And I think just showing that kind of team player and looking at those as opportunities for me to advance my personal growth was really, I think, what helped me continue to grow and work my way up the ladder.
That makes total sense. And it kind of ties into what we were just chatting about, how, sometimes you can't track all the marketing in the middle,
Right.
and for the career, you were like, look, maybe I don't have immediate ROI on this,
Yeah.
me kind of pitching in on this project or jumping in on this thing, but I'm just going to do it anyways.
Yeah.
Or even that, that you're kind of reevaluating what platform to use or what marketing automation. No one asked you to, but you cared,
Yeah.
and then you went for it. But all those experiences, I mean, I think that was kind of like your leadership starting to shine, early on even.
Yeah. So just jump in if you see something that needs to get done. I feel like sometimes people are like, well, it's not my job. Like, I feel like those are never the people that, end up
Yeah.
getting ahead.
I'm sure those aren't the people you hire when you're hiring, future marketers as well.
Totally. I mean, I've always kind of been at like mid-sized to small companies. So it's like all hands on deck for everything and it makes the day go by fast, but you can really grow because you get to get your hands in so many different areas. And that's what I love about being at companies of this size.
It's true though. It's way more fun being, well, I don't say being over busy, but when you're busy and taking on things, even if like when you're in that hustle and the bustle, the energy is so cool, especially for those
Yeah.
smaller companies. You can actually get real things done.
Yeah. Yeah. You like have an idea one day and like all of a sudden it's like done the next day and you're, putting it in place. That's really cool to be able to see you and your team have that influence.
Yeah, and then sales closes it down, and you're like, "Look what we did! Woohoo!
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Success!" Well, where do you any events you're going to be at coming up? Any where can people find you and what events? And then also, what kind of where can they connect with you? So like LinkedIn or Twitter. What are some of the places?
Sure. So I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter. LinkedIn is probably the best place if you're looking to
Okay.
see some of the content I'm sharing. I'm a little more active on there. And then in terms of events, I think I am queued up for 3 events this summer. I think the first one I'll be at the PFL Customer User Conference, Big Sky, Big Ideas in July out in Montana, sharing some of the work that we've been doing from an ABM perspective, specific to direct mail
Okay.
with them and some of their customers. And then I'm going to be at the B2BMX conference in also in Boston in August, which is this is the first year they've done an East Coast event, but I was just at their West Coast event earlier this year. Fantastic conference. I highly recommend it. And then
It's MX, you said?
B2BMX, so the B2B marketing exchange.
Oh,
And
cool.
actually this one, they're actually incorporating sales. So it will be a lot focused on sales and marketing alignment. And I'm actually going to be co-presenting with our CRO, kind of how we've evolved our funnel and all the handoff processes in the funnel as our business needs changed.
Oh, that sounds really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'll be at the MarTech event. I think that's in the fall, also here in Boston.
Okay. And you said the PFL event is in Montana?
Yeah, that's where they're headquartered. So I've never been out there. We get to do a little tour of Yellowstone. So that's a nice selling feature.
Yeah, I'm doing a Salesforce event out there. I haven't been out there either. It's Big Sky Dreaming, one of the Salesforce user events, and
Yeah.
oh, they're calling it all calling it Big Sky. But for some of my friends who've been there, say that the sky just really feels big compared to out here. So we shall see.
Yeah. Looking forward to that one.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on here. I mean, this has been fantastic.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. And I love how these things are coming out more and marketers and sales are sharing like their best practices and knowledge. And I think as we all, you know, learn from each other, we can all do better and make it a better, buying and selling experience for everyone. So
Yeah, I love that.
awesome.
Love that. And, and for everyone listening, if you've learned something, and I know you have, because I literally have 2 pages of notes front to back. I went to school here. I've learned a bunch. So if you've learned a lot out there, share this with someone else. Get this in their hands. So that makes you the thought leader, and you're getting that content in front of them that they can learn from. And again, back to Lauren's point, it makes a better experience for the customers. So let's do that. And for everyone out there, this has been the Hardcore Marketing Show. We will see you all next time.